I give you my magical core, he said clearly. The main place where my heavenly energy comes from. I will pour it into this spring to make it stronger against the wraith's power. I will never be able to turn into a dragon again. But the spring will live on. The water cycle in the area will be fixed. Maya turned to him quickly. Your dragon shape? Forever. He said without looking at her, it is the only currency big enough to make the Guardian happy. And it is the right exchange. The ecosystem of this planet for my power. It is a fair deal. The Guardian was still. Accepted for the spring's growth. But just making things louder won't stop the wraith. The wraith is stuck. To get rid of an anchor, you need to give it a tether. A tether that is alive. Something that is part of this world. There was a huge amount of silence after that. Maya knew what was going to happen before Cairo turned to stop her. No, he said right away, turning to face her. His eyes were completely gold now. He didn't care about keeping up the human look. Not at all. What does it mean by a living tether? Maya asked, looking at the Guardian instead of Cairo. The voice of pressure came back. Part of the living force that gives life to a creature in this world. Willingly given. It will make a counter-anchor, which is a thread of life force on Earth that will pull the wraith's anchor free and let the amplified spring clean the air. The offering creature has to pay a lot, but not enough to kill it. Years of life. Maybe 10 years of life. Maya felt the weight of that settle on her. 10 years of her life. She was 14 years old. She might live to be 100 or 90. That was the only thing that was different. Abstract. Very big. Scary. Real. Maya. Cairo's voice was urgent and raw, with all of its heavenly layers taken away. He really sounded desperate for the first time. Don't do this. Please. I will find a different way. I will, she said. Is there another way? He came to a stop. She kept looking at him. Be honest with me. A long wait. Behind him the spring sparkled. No, he finally said. Not in the time we have. Maya looked at the Guardian and said, I offer it. Maya, I offer it freely, she said louder, ignoring Cairo's voice. 10 years of my life force given freely, to tie down the wraith's anchor and set this planet's water free. She swallowed. I agree to pay. The Guardian was still for a long time. Then it bent down, its stone body moving slowly and grindingly. Both options are okay. Go ahead. What happened next was one of the most amazing things Maya had ever seen. She would spend the rest of her life, every year she had just bargained with, trying to find the right words to describe it. Cairo put both of his hands on the spring's surface. He shut his eyes. And then he let it all out. There was light. Not the kind of light that comes from a lamp, a fire, or even lightning. This was something older, a deep, resonant gold that seemed to come from a place below color, below the visible spectrum, from somewhere fundamental and structural in the nature of the universe itself. It flowed from Cairo's hands into the spring. Maya fell back because of how strong the energy was coming out. She put her arm over her eyes but kept watching through the space between her forearm and her face. She couldn't look away. The spring reacted right away. The level of the water went up. Not slowly, it shot up, filling the stone basin in seconds, overflowing the edges and rushing out across the clearing floor in silver streams that soaked into the dry ground right away. The dead ferns around the basin changed from gray to green in just a few seconds, opening up like time-lapse photography, as if years of normal growth were being sped up into moments. Cairo was trembling. His whole body was vibrating at a frequency that hurt Maya's teeth. His skin, which had looked like cracked copper, was now glowing from the inside out, with gold light pouring through every crack like lava through a fault line. His coat fell apart and burned away to nothing. The Guardian reached out to Maya with one huge stone hand. She got it without being told. She stepped forward and put her hand on the wet stone of its palm. She was ready for pain. What she felt instead was more like loss, like watching a train leave a station with something you loved on it and knowing you couldn't stop it and that it was going somewhere you couldn't follow. A strong, painful pull from somewhere inside her chest that wasn't physical or emotional, but something more important than either of those. It felt like a part of the music of her life was being taken out of the song. It lasted about 10 seconds. The guardian then let go of her hand. It's over. The tether is thrown. Above them, impossibly high, above the clouds, above the stratosphere, in the cold dark of the upper atmosphere, something huge, old, and hungry felt the tether catch hold of its anchor like a hook through its body. The drought wraith, which had been feeding and growing stronger for 3 weeks, draining rivers, evaporating springs, and taking moisture from the air, soil, and living roots, felt the tether. And it yelled. Maya could hear it even from the ground and through miles of air. It came as a crack of pressure across the sky, a sudden sharp pain in both ears, and a feeling like the air itself was flinching. Then, like a current going through a wire, the spring's amplified energy shot up through the tether and hit. You could see the effect from the clearing. A flash of silver-white light far above the clouds, spreading out in a perfect circle like the rings that form when a stone is dropped in still water. The sky above the mountain, which had been a flat, hammered copper color for weeks, changed almost right away. Maya saw her first cloud in 3 weeks. It came from the west and was small, white, and perfect. Then one more. Then there were 10. After that, the clouds came quickly, piling up from the horizon at a speed that was clearly not normal weather. It was something more planned, something fixing itself as the atmosphere rushed to fix the damage the wraith had done to the environment. In 5 minutes, the temperature dropped by 10 degrees. Maya could feel the humidity coming back into the air she was breathing. It was that feeling of air with water in it that was so familiar and mist that it made her eyes sting. And Cairo fell down at the spring. The light had gone out. He was lying on his back at the edge of the basin with one hand still in the water. He didn't look the same anymore. His skin cracks had healed. His lips had stopped bleeding. He looked like a man with no shine, no scale pattern, and no weight that was too heavy. Maya ran to him and fell to her knees. Cairo. She took hold of his shoulder. Cairo, are you? He opened his eyes. They were brown. Fully, usually brown. It worked, he said. His voice was now only one layer. People. He sounded tired, surprised, and sad, like he was grieving. The dragon form, Maya said. It's really gone? Yes. He slowly sat up and looked at his hands. They were normal hands with no shimmer or claws hidden beneath the surface. The core was what caused the change. I am without it. He stopped to think of the word. Grounded. Permanently on the ground. Maya sat next to him at the edge of the spring that was overflowing and listened to the clouds getting thicker above them. I'm sorry, she said. He looked at her. Don't be. You gave more than I did. She thought for about 10 years. About being 70 instead of 80, or 65 instead of 75. About whatever those years might have been like. She said, I gave years I haven't lived yet. You gave away something you already had. For a moment he was quiet. He then asked, How old are you? 14. He nodded slowly. When I was 14, my kind thought I had just learned how to make rain for the first time. I stood in the upper atmosphere of a young planet and called water vapor from the surface. I shaped it into storm clouds and let it fall. I watched it hit dry ground and soak in. I could feel the planet respond like a heartbeat starting up. He stopped. That was the most important thing I've ever done. More important than anything else in the last 3,000 years. He gave her a look. Until now. There was thunder rolling across the mountain above them. Then, in a beautiful way, the first rain in 6 weeks started to fall. Maya looked up at it and closed her eyes. Neither of them said anything for a long time. They sat at the edge of an old spring in the mountains above Millbrook, Colorado, with rain falling on their shoulders and soaking into the cracked ground around them. They listened as the world began to breathe again. Cairo then said, The spring showed me something while my energy was going through it. Something about you. Maya looked around. What? Your mother was right about your name, he said. But she didn't know the whole story. In that old language which is no longer spoken, the word for water didn't just mean water as a thing. It meant to do something with water. The act of putting something in that is empty. being in the lowest, driest place and getting there. He kept his eyes on her. She gave you a name that meant a lot more than she knew. It started to rain harder. Maya thought about how the dry riverbed would crack open as the water table rose in the valley below. At first, she thought the Millbrook River would find its way again, but then it did so with more and more confidence. She thought about how the kids in the town would wake up tomorrow to the sound of running water and not know why they were crying. She knew why they were crying. "What's going to happen now?" she asked. Cairo looked up at the sky. The clouds were thick, dark, and full, which made it look like it would rain for days instead of hours. She could feel the wraith's absence like you feel the absence of a sound that has been there for so long that you stop noticing it. You only realize it was there when it stops. "Now," he said, "we deal with what comes next." He sounded like he knew something that he hadn't told her yet. She turned her head to look at him. "What does that mean?" He looked her in the eye. He said carefully, "The wraith that was here was a scout. It rained for 4 days. Rain that isn't violent. Not rain that floods. The rain was patient, steady, and generous. It soaked into every crack in the ground, filled up every dry creek bed, and brought the Millbrook River back from nothing to a cautious trickle to a full-throated rush in just 72 hours. People in the town acted like people do when something awful is over. Everyone went outside. Old men, kids, and moms with babies all stood in their yards or on their front porches and let the rain fall on them. They smiled at each other across fences like they were all sharing the same perfect secret. On the local news, the mayor called it a meteorological miracle. The scientists from the university came back with their tools and looked even more confused than they had before. No one had any answers. Maya knew everything, but she didn't tell anyone. She had walked back down the mountain with Cairo moving slowly next to her. They were both soaked by the time they reached the tree line, and she had taken him home. Maya had been dreading this conversation with her grandmother since the day she decided to do it. Ruth Collins was 71 years old and had been taking care of Maya since she was 7. She was short, had sharp eyes, was very practical, and as it turned out, was much harder to surprise than Maya thought. Maya sat her grandma down at the kitchen table, made her 2 cups of tea and told her everything. The riverbed, Cairo, the drought wraith, the spring, the guardian, the deal. Ruth didn't say anything while she listened. Maya had never met anyone else who could really listen without interrupting. Ruth sat quietly for a long time after Maya finished, holding her teacup with both hands and looking at Cairo, who was sitting at the end of the table and looked both old and very normal. "Then you gave up 10 years of your celestial energy to save the water on this planet?" "I did," Cairo said. "And my granddaughter gave up 10 years of her life force to anchor the counterattack?" "She did. Against my strong, and now you are human." "Effectively, yes." Ruth kept looking at him for a little while longer. "Can you cook?" Cairo blinked. "I don't know," Ruth said. "Then you'll learn. We're going to keep you here until we figure out what to do next. There will not be a man sleeping in my dry riverbed." She moved her chair back and went to the stove. "I'm cooking dinner." "Set the table, Maya." That was 3 days ago. Maya was sitting in the living room on the 4th night of rain with a notebook open on her knees. Cairo was standing at the window watching the water run down the glass in long silver channels. "Tell me about the scouts," she said. He had been circling it for days, breaking it down into small parts and explaining it slowly, like someone telling a hard truth so that it isn't too hard to handle. He said, "The drought wraiths don't come by chance. They are well organized. In sync. The smallest type of being that came here was a first seeker. It wasn't supposed to drain the planet. It was supposed to check the planet's defenses and tell a bigger group what it found." Maya said, "It's already dead." "Yes, the physical anchor is gone. But it sent a message before it was cut." He looked away from the window. "All that it learned. The makeup of the water on the planet. The spring's presence. The fact that I'm here." He stopped for a moment. "Your presence." Maya stopped writing in her notebook. "Me specifically?" "The act you did, offering your life force to a guardian voluntarily, is very rare in the galaxy. Most civilizations in our galaxy can't do it. The neurological and emotional structure needed to make a real sacrifice while fully understanding the cost is, he looked for words, dear. And from the Wraith Collective's point of view, it's dangerous because it's the only kind of countermeasure that can get rid of their anchors. So they know I'm here. They know that a child made a guardian pact. Next time they will send something bigger to stop it from happening again. The rain hit the window steadily. Maya opened her notebook. She had been filling it out for 3 days, organizing and cross-referencing everything Cairo had told her. Water cycles on Earth. Wraiths are put into groups based on their size and how they act. The spring's new louder state. Before it broke apart, Cairo's core created an energy barrier around the valley. This barrier would last for about 18 months. 18 months, she said. Give or take. Then what? Then the barrier fades and the valley is exposed again. He came and sat down in front of her. We need to build something more permanent before that happens. For days he had been talking about us. She kept seeing it. You keep saying we, she said. Yes. You lost your powers. No. But I know a lot about how wraiths think, move, and where they are weak because I've been studying them for 3,000 years. He leaned forward a little bit. And you can make guardian pacts. This means that we could set anchor points if we were ready. Not just here but at many places around the world where there is water. A network of springs that are safe. A system of defense for the planet. Maya looked at him. You're asking a lot from a 14-year-old girl. He said, I'm talking about a very big project for a girl who is 14 and a dragon who is 3,000 years old. Which is a much stronger team. Maya laughed, even though it had been 10 years and there was a cosmic enemy somewhere in the dark between the stars. She was surprised. Cairo also seemed surprised. He looked at her with a curious, warm and very, very new look on his face. It was the look of someone who had never heard real human laughter before and was seeing it as something more than a sound, as a thing, a presence, a small defiant light. What? She asked. Nothing, he said. I forgot that people do that. Laugh. He told me to laugh at things that are impossible. For a moment he was quiet. In 3,000 years of living, my kind has never laughed. We had a party. We were sad. We were angry, scared, and in love. He stopped. But we never laughed at things that were impossible. We took the impossible seriously. With a plan. He kept looking at her. I think that's why you're still here and I'm the last of mine. Outside it was raining. Ruth was humming to herself in the kitchen on the floor below. 3 weeks went by. The Millbrook River was strong and clear. The town carefully rebuilt its relationship with water, like how people rebuild trust after a shock. Grateful, careful, and a little bit unable to believe it was real. The farmers went back to their fields. Kids went back to the creek behind the school. The university scientists wrote a paper about strange things happening in the atmosphere that didn't come to any conclusions and then went home. Life looked completely normal on the outside. Maya's life had never been stranger or more meaningful than it was now. Cairo had gotten used to being human with the same level of focus as someone who is determined to fully master a new skill. At first he learned to cook badly. But then he learned to do it with surprising accuracy. He learned how to drive Ruth's old pickup. He learned that sleep was not optional anymore like it had been when he had celestial energy to draw on. He also learned that coffee was a necessary deal between his body and the morning. Ruth said dryly one Sunday that he was shockingly good at being a person, for someone who has never been one before. But at night, when the house was quiet, Maya would come down and find him at the kitchen table with maps spread out on it. There were topographic maps, geological survey maps, and satellite images of watersheds and aquifers. She would pour 2 glasses of water and sit down with him and they would work. In theory, the system they were building was beautiful. In real life it was huge. Cairo said one night, pointing to a world map with red circles on it, there are 47 primary spring sites around the world that still have original water signatures. Not just old water but water that has been moving since the first hydrological cycle on Earth. These are the places where the Guardian is. Maya looked at the map. Red circles in Tibet. In the highlands of Scotland. In New Zealand. In Patagonia. In the mountains of the Atlas. In the highlands of Ethiopia. How do we get to all of them? We don't have to get to all of them, he said. We need to find the people who already live near them. The people who have always lived close to them. He stared at her. Every one of these places has a nearby community of people. Groups of native people. Families who live in the country. People who have lived near these water sources for a long time. He touched the map. Those people already know the Guardians even if they don't call them that. They call them gods, spirits, and keepers. There is already a relationship. It just needs to be turned on so it works. You want to make a network of people, Maya said slowly. Yes. People who make Guardian pacts. Yes. Not the full sacrifice pact. The one you made was needed because of the crisis. A Guardian pact can be a small gift, a long-term promise, or a relationship instead of a transaction. He gave her a look. Think of it as a group of people who listen. 47 people all over the world, each one connected to a main spring, and each spring connected to the others through the underground water table. And if another wraith comes, the network turns on. The springs work together to make things stronger. Before the wraith can settle in, the anchors are taken off. He leaned back. An immune system, as I said. But this time, it's built into the planet itself instead of relying on one guardian in the sky. For a long time Maya stared at the map. 3,000 years ago you planned this, didn't you? She asked. This is what you've always wanted to make. This is what you were moving toward before the wraiths hunted you down, before everything. Cairo was quiet. I made the first version of this system, he finally said. For a different planet. A long time ago. I was almost done when the wraiths came in. He stopped. I've had the plans in my head ever since. Waiting for a planet that might let me finish. Maya looked at him and said, let's finish it. He turned to look at her. This man who was not a man, this strange old being sitting at a kitchen table in Millbrook, Colorado with a cup of cold coffee and a world map with red circles on it. Something in his face settled. Something old, heavy, and tired moved and changed into something that, strangely enough, looked like hope. I will need your help, he said. I know, she said. That's why you're still here.